Why does the name have so many ras and so many exclamation points?
裏切りの夕焼け厄介に絡みつく汗を切り裂くようにしてマシンは叫ぶ歌うように朝日は昇る、水平線を今信じれば変わるのさ無意味じゃないあの光
Today, I'm reviewing Durarara, and Durarara takes place in modern Tokyo's downtown district, Ikebukuro, where a teenager by the name of Mikado Ryugamine is convinced by his friend Masami to move to Tokyo, where they will be attending school together. The city is filled with colorful characters that Mikado shouldn't cross, such as Shizuo Heiwajima, a hot-headed violent man who has inhuman strength, Izaya Orihara, a sociopathic information broker, as well as a mysterious gang called the Dollars. But there's also the supernatural roaming the streets. The Black Rider, also known as Stilson, an Irish Dullahan or fairy, who is in Ikebukuro searching for her head. The show follows these as well as other characters as they cross each other's paths and creating a bigger story where all of them coincidentally happen to be involved in. That's how I nicknamed the show because it has so many Ras. I decided, okay, I'm just going to have an infinite amount of Ras in its name. So anyway, let's get to the characters. And I would say that the characters in the show are really a focal point of the whole entire show itself. It's very much a character ensemble type of show. So the characters are much more important than the story. The story is a second tier, a second layer of the show compared to the characters. You would not be watching if it weren't for these people. So there are a lot of characters in this show, obviously, and so I'm going to be only mentioning the characters that I find the most important or stuck out to me the most. So let's start with Mikado Ryugamine. And I had a hard time with his name, not because it's Japanese. I can remember everyone else's name, but I cannot remember Mikado's, and it took me a long time to get his name, and it's during this review that I had to learn it. So, basically his character is us in this situation. He's the normal one coming into this crazy world. So I get why he isn't as unique as some of the other characters because you need normal to balance out the crazy because then crazy wouldn't be crazy if everyone was crazy. It would be normal. I liked him. He was okay. It's just nothing special about him. And the acting was fine. Nothing special about it. Wasn't bad. Wasn't fantastic. It was fine. And the voice actor is Daryl Gilbo. So now we're gonna get on to Masami Kida. Oh, Masami. He is that flirt that's full of himself, but he's a good guy. He's very animated. No pun intended. He's just very energetic and outgoing. But honestly, I feel like I've seen his type of character before. But actually, what you find out about him later in the show, which I obviously would say, he stands out a little bit more than other characters. Now, for the acting, there's something about it that I don't like. I think it's the fact that the actor was trying a little bit too hard. Bryce Papenbrook is his voice actor. But I have to say that he does breathe a lot of life into Masami, so in a way, his voice fits the character, but if he just didn't try so hard, I feel like he's just straining to kind of get this character to be as, oh, hey ladies, come to me, type of deal that is just not very all that way believable. It feels a little staged. So now I'm going to get on to my favorite characters, and I'm going to start with Stilson, the Black Rider. She is awesome. I love this character so much. She rides a motorcycle, she has a scythe, and she kicks butt all with having no head. She's such a sweetie, and she always looks out for people, even if she might not know them all that much. I found the supernatural aspect of her really, really interesting. They haven't really finished up her story fully, and so I'm going to let this go because there is going to be a season that's coming up. So, very much a possibility they will continue on with what's going on with her. I really liked her voice acting. I thought that the actor did a great job of conveying that sweetness that the character has. So I want to mention the voice actress, Carl Walgreen. So now we're going to move on to Shizuo. That is what I love about this character. He will throw a vending machine at you if you look at him wrong. It's so funny too how he contradicts himself, because when you find out more about him, he's like, I just want peace. I'm a peaceful guy. I don't want violence. But then all he does is just get into fights and get mad all the time. His backstory is very fascinating and it's really unique. I've never, ever heard a backstory like that. I've never heard a story like that about a character. So I have to give mad props to the show for coming up with something so different. People tend to look over Shizuo because of Izaya, and I think that Shizuo is just as good of a character as Izaya. And speaking of those two, they have great chemistry together. I love watching those two just fight all the time. It's fantastic. The voice acting was very good. I like the kind of roughness of his voice. And the voice actor is Crispin Freeman. Now let's get on to the last but not least character, Izaya Orihara. He is really one of those iconic characters that comes out of a show or a movie or a game that everyone loves, and rightfully so. He is a great character, and he's definitely not overhyped or overrated. He's unpredictable, he's crazy, but he's smart. He has no fear, and the thing is that he loves just observing humans and just messing with them just to see how they react. In a way, he reminds me of the Joker. Like, he doesn't kill people, per se, and he doesn't cause mayhem or destruction, but they both have a lot of similar qualities, and I think those qualities is what makes them such lovable characters by the viewer. Yeah, he really is that character that you smile when he's on screen, and you just cannot wait to see what he's going to do, because he's always doing something interesting, and he's always up to something. So you're just kind of waiting to see what is he planning to do, what's his angle. I feel like Izaya really transcends the show and is just a great character, and they did a great job with developing him. The voice acting, this is the best voice acting in the show, English-wise. Fantastic. Fantastic voice acting. He really captured the essence of Izaya and just fit the character so well, his voice. And Johnny Young Bosch. I'm very much acquainted with Johnny Young Bosch in the anime universe. He's very much known, and this is one of his best characters. So I'm just going to mention some other characters. Anri is kind of a main character, so I just want to mention her. I didn't care for her character. I thought she was very flat, uninteresting, and didn't care for her at all. Next we have Simon, and I wish we saw more of him. There's something going on with that character that they're not showing us yet. But one thing that irks me is the way his character is designed. I don't know. Like, I still like him. I still like the character, but just something I don't like the way his character is designed. And next is Shinra. Oh, he's such a weirdo, but he's that lovable weirdo. And him and his connection with Celty is really cute. Really liked him as well, and that's all the characters I'm going to mention. All of the characters on the show really create diversity because, you know, there's so many, so it creates a much bigger story, and it makes the world feel a little bigger, but ultimately, the rest of the characters in the show are okay. I would not notice a thing if they just cut them out of the show. So now I'm going to get into the positives overall about the show, and the animation is fantastic. I feel like they really didn't cut any corners. The look of the show is very nice, and as well as most of the character designs. You can definitely distinguish every single character. They're all very unique looking. Even though the show has a lot of supernatural elements, the show feels really realistic and grounded. The two openings are really cool. I love that they show all of the characters' names in the opening credits, because since the show has so many characters in it, it's just nice to be able to have a refresher every single time you watch an episode, because I know I couldn't remember all of the characters' names. The music overall in the show is very well done, and I think it fits the tone of the show perfectly. The opening and credit songs, as well as the score itself, it has a little bit of a jazzy type of feel to it. It's very mellow. The show has some very well-written, memorable characters, and in a way, I'd have to say that Durarara, after watching it for a second time, it felt like Avatar: The Last Airbender to me. Nothing they have in common except for the fact that with that show, I'm able to go back and watch it over and over and over again and still have that same exact feeling I had when I first watched the show. And surprisingly, this holds up really well, and it's like that show. And I found the jokes hilarious the second time around, and the third time I kept rewatching it over again, and I found myself still laughing out loud from them. This is definitely a show that can be rewatched multiple times and will still stay fresh to you. Which leads me over to the writing, and basically the dialogue is just written well, so well for the characters, and the show has such impeccable comedic timing, and as I said, man, I laughed out loud from a lot of points in the show. I'm one of those people that really does not laugh a lot from media. This show did it. This show got me to laugh, and that is a really hard thing to do. The show takes itself seriously, but it still manages to be lighthearted. I really liked the different characters narrating other characters. It just added this unique quality to the show, and it gave us insight more of what the character is thinking in their head and how they function. It spends an equal amount of time on each character, so you really get to know them, and there are only a few characters that feel like they didn't get all of the development, but then again, there's another season coming up, and they might go into that more in that season. But for the most part, most of the characters, really, all of them have their own unique personality, so they did a really great job of balancing all of the characters, giving them equal screen time, and so you never technically feel like you want to see more of a character because they were underdeveloped, but more of the fact of you will want to see your favorite character because they're your favorite character. So now I'm going to get on to the negatives. For the voice acting, it varied. Like, it went from great to iffy. None of the voice acting was bad, but it could have been better. I think there are just too many characters in the show. Some of them don't get hardly any development, especially in the second half of the show. Which leads me to the fact that there are a lot of storylines within the show, and it makes me think that they bit off more than they could chew. Some storylines kind of have nothing to do with the rest of the show, so they kind of go nowhere, and I feel like that time could be taken up developing more of those storylines that didn't have all that much attention. Everything involving the slasher ruins the show. It felt so out of place despite there being a headless woman. If that feels out of place, then there's something wrong there. There's still a lot of interesting things to enjoy about the second half of the show. So basically, like when the opening credits change, but it's not as interesting as the first half. Most of the characters brought in, they have barely any screen time. There are all of these characters that they have in the opening credits, and they're like only 5 minutes in the whole entire show. What's the point of having them in the credits if they're barely actually in the show to begin with? They focus a lot more on Mikado, Henri, and Masami in the second half, and compared to the other characters in the show, they're really the least interesting characters of the bunch. The second half doesn't really take a drastic turn, but the quality of the writing goes down. There are so many more interesting storylines to follow than what was followed, and the writing and the dialogue and the characters are all the same. They're still likable. Nothing really changes there, but it's just not as coherent with the first part of the show. So overall, Durarara is a unique anime that isn't overly cartoony like other animes, and it's surprisingly realistic in its approach, takes itself seriously, but still manages to keep light in its tone. Every character interacts so well with each other, as well as the voice actors and all of them having different personalities. The writing and narration is tight for most characters, but some got shortchanged. The show left a lot of storylines unfinished, and the show feels very reminiscent of Death Note, where one part is better than the other. However, the characters keep you invested, and it's that type of show that after a while you think to yourself, hey, I haven't watched it in a while, let's watch it again. And you'll get the same feeling you got when you watched it for the first time. So overall, I really liked the show. I really liked a lot of the characters in it. It could have been better in the second half. The second half kind of ruined it for me a little bit. It's not terrible, but some of the stuff they went into just was not as interesting and as exciting as the first part of the show. So I'm going to have to give it 3.5 stars. That's a good rating. It's right under 4 stars, of which I gave Death Note, and it really is in that same category of one half is better than the other. But I feel like even with Death Note's second half, it was still more well written than what they went with Durarara. So thank you so much for watching my review. I will be back next week for a new anime review, and be sure to leave any suggestions you might have for future reviews, and I will surely add them onto my list to review them in the future. Goodbye!